So today we are looking at two brand spanking new products. The first one is the Shimano Sustain FJ. We've got a 2500 size here and the Australian only release of the Shimano T-Curve Premium. We've also got one of these $450 reels to give away, so let's get into it. So it has been a big day. We were on the water earlier this afternoon. We are now talking about the gear. So independently in this video, we'll talk about both the reel and the rod, and I'll throw some chapters in below so that you can click forward or back and look at what you need. Now, the other thing that we'll also do, I'll talk about my experiences of both these items and the good and the bad and how they perform on the water. And I'll also include some behind the scenes kind of stuff that I got from Shimano after talking to them on the phone about the products. I'd ask you to consider, if you want to see the channel grow, smashing that like button below. We also do have the channel memberships and the affiliate linking going on there as well. So there are many ways to support the channel if you're into that. So first of all, let's talk about this reel. Now, it is the Sustain FJ, and if you have a look at the data sheet, it does sit a level up on the Shimano Vanford that everybody loves. Now, it is $450, and for those Daiwa fans on this channel, that sits between the Revelry, which is about $500 that I really like, and the TD Soul MQ that sits around about that $400. I would price it at the entry level position for the high-end spectrum. So it's certainly not a entry-level reel, but when you're starting to get into that high-end space, I do think this is kind of that entry level into the high-end area. And that's a pretty cool thing because we get to be really critical of the performance of this reel. And it was pretty cool to hear Shimano say something similar when I had a chat to them about this reel yesterday. They basically saw the Sustain FJ as the reel a fisherman could purchase as their introduction to high-end gear, kind of like a gateway. And I think that's really important to understand because Shimano see this as their first gateway reel for an avid fisherman to really start to explore and maybe spend a little bit of money on. By doing that and leaving a really good impression, they hope then that eventually that fisherman might spend a lot more money in the Stellas and the high-end reels over their long-term fishing journey. So that means that this reel is really important to them. Now on the water, there were three main things that I really noticed about the reel in terms of its performance. The first that I was particularly looking for was actually the balance. Now, you might remember in the Vanford video, I mentioned that at the top of the stroke, the Vanford actually felt like it was top heavy and kind of wanted to tip over on me. And if I put the Sustain and the Vanford right next to each other, you can see why I might have been just a little bit worried that this reel would have the same thing because they look pretty much the same. The difference though in the body was that the Vanford was actually made from a composite material, whilst this Sustain is a lightweight alloy. Now that change of material has actually pulled the center of gravity back toward the center of the reel, and I'm really happy to say that this reel is actually really nicely balanced. There was no top heaviness about it. It was actually a pleasure to have in your hand and fish with. Now the second thing that I noticed about the reel was actually how easy it was to turn the reel, especially coming off the back of the Nasky review, which is like $189 compared to this $450 rod. What I did find was that it didn't take a lot of force to initially move the handle, and when it was going, it was actually quite smooth through the hand. So I spoke to Shimano and asked why that was, and one of the things that they mentioned was the MGL rotor. Now, I'll quickly just undo this and explain how they do it. Reels traditionally used to have this mechanism in the rotor, which is the bit that spins around the outside, that would automatically flick the bailed arm back over when you started to wind. Traditionally, that was actually in the same side as the roller bearing, which is this side here. Now, what they found is that if you load the weight up on one side of the rotor, well then that makes the other side quite light, and you end up with like a bit of an oscillation going on there where it's not exactly balanced. To get around that, they added weight to the opposite side, and then of course that would just add total weight to the reel. So what Shimano did with this MGL rotor was they figured out that that mechanism that is spring loaded could be actually in the other side of the rotor. So instead of being on the same side as the line spooler, they put it on this side, which then offset the weight, and then you ended up with this nice balanced, easy flowing rotor. Obviously, when you couple that with some nice smooth internal gearing, that's pretty cool, but when you hear the term MGL rotor, that's basically what's going on. So on the water, those were the main 2 points that for me really stood out: how easy it was to wind and how balanced the reel felt. In terms of the casting distance, it was really quite good with a long stroke spool. I rigged it with 16 bound braid that was a Dangan braid that you'll see on the market come out soon. I am testing that stuff on the side, but again, it was really nice to see that long stroke spool back, because again, I'd been using the Nasky and it does not have that on this reel. What both of these reels do have though is the silent drive technology, which I guess is a really branded way of saying that internally the tolerances between the gearings and the areas where there used to be movement, they're trying to remove. So you're going to get less movement, less wear, less play, if you like. That is literally me going sideways. Less play, less movement, and the reel will last longer. Less wear, I guess, is the thing to take away from that. And so in terms of constructive stuff, I've basically got 2 things that I have picked up with this reel. And I guess you could argue that I might be clutching at straws here, and that's all good, but you be the judge. The first is this end cap here. This end cap is exactly the same as it is on the Nasky, and exactly the same as the Vanford. It would have just been nice, like in terms of a design difference, to be a little bit different. And the reason that I notice it is because I take all my handles off from this right side and then I move them across to the left as soon as I get the reels. Now, the second constructive point about the reel, and there's no other way to get around it because it is a data set, is that this reel weighs 210 grams. Now, on the water though, you guys won't even notice it, but there are reels out there that are weighing around about that 160 gram mark. So you're talking extra 50 grams, but that wouldn't stop me from buying it because it does feel really, really nice. So let's talk about the pairing. So I've got it paired with this Shimano T-Curve Premium, this 722. It's a 2 to 4 kilo light spin reel. Now, it's got a bit of cork on it, and there's a few different things that I'm going to talk about it. But first, we are going to talk about the giveaway. So big shout out and thank you to Shimano Australia for providing this reel to test and the one that we are going to give away. So to enter the giveaway, all you need to do is like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below on 2 things. Firstly, tell me where you think the price point for a high level or high end reel actually starts, whether that's $300 or $600 or $400. Tell me what price point you think actually qualifies for a high-end reel. Secondly, I want you to tell me whether or not you like your rods to come with a little hook keeper or not. That'll come up in a moment, whether it's at the top or the bottom, I don't care. Just tell me whether you like manufacturers actually including them in the reels or in the rods when they come out of the box. As always, I'll draw the giveaway randomly from the comments below in 1 week, so get typing. Oh, another good size flatty. All right, so let's get back to the rod. Now the rod is a T-Curve Premium. So you've probably all heard of the T-Curve range before by Shimano, but this is the Premium. You can see there's a little P at the bottom of the butt section there. Now, a few things did stand out to me about the rod, and they might stand out to you if you look at them initially. And you know, I've got to say a lot of this rod has actually grown on me the more that I have used it. The first thing that did stick out to me was the cork grip. Now, a lot of the rods on my boat at the moment are EVA, and that seems to be the trend at the moment, although I am tracking a few rods that are coming to market that do have cork grips on them. For me, there's a bit of a nostalgic early days fishing when it comes to cork, because it does bring back some memories of fishing with my grandparents and their cork grips that used to be everywhere. So I really like the cork because it is different and it does feel nice, but it is going to be a personal feel. The one point I will mention, and I'll get a bit of a close-up here, you can see that I have gouged the side of the cork, and that's got to do with me planting a jig head into the side there to hold it. Now, I've done that because there's actually no hook keeper on the rod, which means that I have had to add one to the top. Now, luckily, I got a pack of these recently from Frogley's, but like I said before in the giveaway, I'm really interested in getting your opinion on this, whether or not you actually think working from a hook keeper on a rod is a good thing or not. So let me know. One of the other things that did jump out at me, and again, I actually spoke to Shimano about this, was the join here that you've got about the midsection. Now, that little section that does pop out, that spigot, is quite large, and when you put the lines together, you'll notice that there is a little bit of a gap still there. That's actually done on purpose, and the guys at Shimano were saying that the reason that they've done that is because you get guys that constantly twist them open, put them back together, open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. So basically that joint will wear out over time. And the reason they've made it large is so that there's a little bit of play. And let's say over a number of years worth of use, that little section will still be separated and you won't have a bad connection between the bottom and the top. But that's pretty cool to know, because if you ever see a rod like that that's got an opening like that, well, that's the reason behind it. Now lastly, I think the biggest point about this rod that will either make you love it or hate it is actually the butt section. It is somewhat longer than the other rods that are on the boat right now, if I match up the exact positions there, and you can see that. Now if you're under 5'6" and you don't have the longest arms, well then I'd suggest maybe this might be a rod that you have to try install rather than just buying online. I think it'll definitely suit those people that have been watching their rods get smaller, in particular this area here, and have felt a little bit crammed on it. Maybe you've got big hands and you want something a little bit larger. Well, this rod is going to cater for that. I did think to myself, because it did have a long backside here, maybe it was going to be a little tail heavy, and I don't think that at all. They do get around this. This entire section back here is hollow, so it is kind of lightweight, and that's why they can draw the back end out without it getting too tail heavy. Now, like I mentioned at the start, it is a 2 to 4 kilo rod, and the thing that I like about this rod in particular is that it's got a little bit of meat underneath it. It's actually got a really nice sensitive tip, and I find it really useful for plastics. I really can't speak for the rest of the range, but this rod is going to be that rod that I use in the racks, or it's going to be my extraction rig, and I'm going to pair it with this guy here because I actually think that they both go together really, really well. Now I know calling this a racks rod is a little bit different because it is 7'2", but if you remember, it's a little long down here, so it's going to be a little bit shorter up here traditionally than a normal 7'2". That is why I'm calling it for that. Not only that, but it's meaty down the bottom, and I reckon the amount of pressure that I do feel through it, I can put some serious hurt on some fish in structure. I do think together these two products are actually matched really quite well, particularly if you're a Shimano fan and you like the Shimano products. Now I will link it up here, but next week we do have our biggest giveaway of the channel for the last 12 months. We are giving away a J2 Bixby, an electric motor for the kayak, valued at $2,100. Remember the giveaway. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.